Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Tessier of WrestleZone.com here to talk about WWE NXT 2.0. Tonight was the special spring Breakin edition. Another reminder that my usual co-host for these kind of things, John Clark, not here tonight. He had an appendectomy last week and he's still recovering from that. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us. He said hopefully next week, but we're kind of taking it as it comes here, but we're here to talk about what was a fairly eventful episode of NXT 2.0 tonight. Again, another special, like TV special, themed. This time was the Spring Breakin show. On paper, the car was pretty good, so I was looking forward to it. And I think by and large, the show lived up to at least what I was expecting of it. So we'll talk all about that. Before I do, just want to remind you all, this show, like everything we do here, is available on all of our platforms, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. You know where to find us. So please leave a like and subscribe. We appreciate it. More well wishes from John here. Nestor says, "Get well soon, John." So if you're listening, we're all wishing you the best here. Again, so last night's surgery, never fun. Hopefully he's on the mend and feeling back to his 100% self as soon as possible. So like last night, I was also doing play-by-play for this show. So whereas sometimes I kind of let my attention wander over NXT, I was 100% watching the entire show tonight, and I guess that's for the best in some ways, where I'm able to kind of really fully watch the show, maybe more so than usual, for better or worse. But in that case, like I felt like I was able to really focus on the matches more, so maybe I was able to enjoy them even more than usual in some ways. And we opened the show with what was a very fun match. It was the North American title match, three-way match here. Cameron Grimes, Carmelo Hayes, and Solo Sikoa. Very fun three-way match. Cameron Grimes defending the title here. And right before the match started, I was hoping that he would retain because, it felt like it took him a long time to win this first title. Obviously, not counting the $1 million title. And this was a match where I felt he could lose the title, and I was hoping that he would retain because I feel like he deserves to have a good run with it. Cameron's great. Carmelo Hayes is great. Solo Sikoa has been impressive. So I enjoy all three of them. I didn't really think this match would be as good as it was, though. I was definitely overly. My expectations were at a certain level, and this match definitely exceeded them. This was a very, very fun opener, and I tweeted about it during the match here. I thought this would have really fit in on any takeover card, like going back to the black and gold era. Grimes and Hayes really brought it. I thought Solo Sikoa shined as well. All three guys definitely impressed me in a lot of ways. So I really enjoyed this one. There are a bunch of near falls. There's definitely like one or two spots special where I really thought Solo might get the title win here. And I feel like this match was definitely set up in a way that, you could kind of tell, like, okay, his day was not tonight, but it's going to come at some point soon. I definitely enjoyed it a lot here. Steven says Grimes retains. He's going to the moon. Of course, Cameron Grimes is going to the moon. And Brian says the North American title match was a banger. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I'm trying to think of any particularly noteworthy things. The crowd really loved Solo. They were really chanting for him. They're chanting his name, and they really seem to be liking him a lot. So I think that bodes well for him. Even though he lost here and he got pinned, definitely and the performance itself was impressive. So he lost he won even in defeat, I would say. So I agree, Eddie. Definitely was like a takeover match. Usually it's these TV specials, you'll have some good matches, but to me this was good, and also in terms of importance, this was a match was it really lived up to that, not just a TV special, but a takeover level of there were some really cool spots. They had the Tower of Doom, superplex powerbomb kind of thing. There's standing Spanish fly. All three guys really went all out, and I think it delivered for that very reason. So I definitely like this match a lot. Nestor says you love Solo. I'm coming around. I wasn't down on him in the first place, and now that I'm really seeing people are buying what he's selling, if you will, or they're really kind of getting into him, I'm definitely seeing, okay, the guy's got definitely this kind of groundswell of support here, so I can't deny that. It feels like it's in some ways people really cheer him because of the Usos connection, and that's fine. They chant Uso, and the guy is related to them, he looks like him, he dresses like him, he has the moveset. So I'm starting to kind of at least embrace that of hey, whatever works. And Eddie asked me, this is always the question, how long until Solo's in Bloodline? I've been impressed with his progress. We talked about this months ago, and I was like, he'll probably need a couple months to really kind of get acclimated and grow and settle in, and I think that's happened. But at the same time, like I think I don't know, maybe the timeline has been expedited because like I don't know, he seems kind of ready to go in some ways. Like people are responding to him. He seems like kind of like a natural in some ways. Like I can't really say, oh, he's not ready yet. Like he seems able to handle himself. He held his own in this match with two of the NXT's best here with Grimes and Hayes here. So if he does stick around, Steven wonders if we'll see him turn heel. I think that's a possibility, but at the same time, like people, they're just so behind him. I don't know if that'd be the best idea in terms of like, granted, sometimes your best baby faces can be the best heels because of that inherent investment, and then the crowd's even more heartbroken. But in some ways, when people are loving someone so much, just let them be cheered. I think sometimes just let the person be cheered, kind of keep rolling with that, get that momentum, that popularity, just keep rolling with it and see where it goes. Brian going so far as to say that Hayes and Solo are the 2.0 MVPs of the show. I mean, Hayes definitely a very, very bright, shining star here, and he has been for the past several months. And I would say, and maybe to a slightly lesser extent, I would say Solo as well. Definitely been very impressive. But whereas we saw Solo getting a lot of cheers, DJ points out that Cameron Grimes is getting booed, and he asks why. I don't know. As we've seen, the NXT crowd here, it's by and large, I would say, kind of, if not the same crowd, a very similar crowd every week. They don't travel, so they're in the same venue. And so you get this kind of weird dynamic of like, it's not different people, but like their responses might change. Like it's weird. It's this kind of different evolution in some ways of just the reactions we're seeing. Why they're booing Cameron Grimes? I don't know. I don't think he deserves it at all. We saw NSK get booed, and maybe that was partially a result of their booking. I don't see that with Cameron Grimes here. The guy who was cutting promos about winning a title for his father who passed away. So I don't think he deserves that at all. I'm still liking him. I still think he's fun. I still think he's great in the ring. So, and it's not like they're even hinting at a heel turn for him. Like, no, he's just been a nice, fun baby face. Fun in terms of like, fun. He's been himself. I don't know why they're booing him. I don't think they're going to turn him heel because of it. I would hope not. I think I blow that up to just, the weird dynamic of the NXT crowd at this point. And I don't really know what would be other than that. But Grimes retains here. So I was definitely excited about that. As I said, I was hoping that, he would retain, have a nice title run. Kevin with a good point though. And I meant to touch on this. I mean, maybe they're booing Cameron, not so much because they are booing Cameron specifically, but they're booing him because the crowd wants Solo to be the champion so badly, because they're so behind Solo that it's like kind of tips the scales so far in one direction that kind of you see the other side suffer a little bit, where it's like, oh, we're like so into Solo, we're going to boot Grimes kind of as a consequence of that. I think there's some truth to that, definitely, because I mean they were just so into Solo tonight, especially. I definitely think that's at least partially a factor, in terms of what we're seeing here. But Grimes retains, and now the question is, who could be the next challenger? Off the top of my head, no one like jumps right off the page to me at the moment. I mean, nobody really seems to me right now. If it's not someone in this match, I could see them. They can point out that Camille Hayes never got a one-on-one rematch, so I feel like they could do something there. I think that'll make sense. Solo, Solo's gotten 2 title shots now, so I'm not quite sure what's specifically next for him. If they didn't have Santos Escobar and Tony D doing their kind of mob thing, we'll talk about that in a little bit here. I think either one will be a good fit for that. Otherwise, I don't know. We got Brian pointing out maybe Duke Hudson. It's a possibility. And I mean, if you bring up Duke Hudson, we'll talk about him in a minute, but I'll touch on this comment from Steven here. Says Grimes going to feud with Hayes for a while. Hayes needs the North American title back. I mean, Hayes, this match, it was a great match, but in some ways it felt almost beneath Hayes based on the run he had of the title and based on just like he is, I would say, other than Bron Breakker, probably like one of the top stars here on NXT 2.0. So like this felt a little beneath him in some ways. So maybe they might move him up to the NXT title at some point soon. We'll talk about that. The NXT title scene maybe later in the show. At the very least, we saw a title match tonight. But I could see a feud again. He's never got that one-on-one rematch, so at least in the short-term future, that'll be one thing. Jerry points out that Solo needs to be the champion, and because the whole bloodline could be the champions on each brand. And I think I mentioned that last week. Like that there's something to be said for that, for having Solo win the title, and that kind of like at least set up his eventual move to the bloodline. Like, oh, I helped further the legacy of the bloodline here by winning the title here. That makes sense. I like the idea. But again, he's already had 2 title shots, so maybe they might kind of circle back to that at some point, depending, again, what the timeline with him is, when they want to move him up, that kind of stuff. Steven jokingly says Von Wagner. They'll probably give him a shot, at least at the title, and giving a title shot, maybe not being the champion. But I would imagine that we might see him challenge for some gold. Cameron Grimes is a face, so that kind of writes itself there. Again, at least for a one-off shot. And I don't see any reason why not to see how that would go. Give Grimes a challenger that's at least believable as someone that could beat him based on what we've seen so far. But Brian Everett did point out Duke Hudson, sidebar, DJ points out that Joe Gacy could be next. Talk about Joe Gacy a little earlier. He was challenging for the NXT title tonight. It felt like they might be continuing that based on what we saw at the very end of the show. Gacy versus Grimes would be fun, and maybe they'll circle back to that as well after Gacy's done with Bron Breakker. But I don't know if he'd go right from NXT title challenging for that to the North American title. But DJ, yes, I was just about to bring this up because we had Brian bring up Duke Hudson. Of course, DJ brings up the in Duke, quote unquote, in Duke segment tonight. No more Index. My heart breaks. No more Induja. He says this segment between Indy Hartwell and Duke Hudson was more depressing than Dana Brooke wanting a divorce last night, despite the fact that Dana saw his tweet about it last night and liked it after saying why, Reggie, why. Cool shout out for you there, DJ, getting a little interaction with Dana Brooke there. But this segment fired me up, everybody. Like, I was upset. We talked about it, I think, on the SmackDown show. I think I referenced it last night as well. So Dexter Lumis of Index, my beloved couple on NXT, and Persia Parada of Induja, the kind of the flip side of that equation there. Indy Hartwell and Dexter on one hand, and Persia and Duke Hudson on the other. They've been feuding. They were a tag team. There's a whole different layers to it. And Indy and Dexter were a married couple. Dexter and Persia got released on Friday. Heartbreaking stuff, absolutely. This was the first episode of NXT since those cuts happened. So I think it was not long after this North American title match. It was at some point. I feel like maybe midway through the show. Camera pans backstage. Indy and Duke I think the camera's on Indy at first, and she's looking at her hand. Her wedding ring is gone, and I was like, oh man, like that is just like sad, like legitimately upsetting. Oh man, I was just like, that really upset me, everybody. I can't even lie. I was like, that sucks, man. The wedding ring was no longer there. I love that storyline so much, and like just to see it end like that with someone getting released like that, just crushing. And so the camera zooms in, and she's like clearly upset. No, the wedding ring is gone. Commentary team says nothing, no references at all to what happened. And like, admittedly, not that I would necessarily expect them to say, "Oh yeah, they got released." Like, I know that's not realistic, but like, it's still disappointing. Of like, no explanation. Like, not even like in TV, actors leave TV shows and they get written out. Even if you don't see it on screen, they're like, "Oh, they went and did X, or they did this, or like something." Nothing, no reference at all. They're just gone. So Indy was there, no wedding ring. Duke shows up. He's sad as well because Persia got released. At least we know that. They referenced that on the show. So DJ points out Duke was depressed. He tries to hit on Indy. He makes a move, goes to kiss her, and she says, "Hell no." So at least maybe in spirit, she's still with Dexter in some ways. Oh, man. Yeah, I was upset about this. I saw people seem to like this, that it was like an acknowledgement, at least, of the storyline. And there's truth in that at least they alluded to the broken relationships here. I think that's something. At least they made some attempt to acknowledge it. I guess my upsetness about it just stems from the fact that I'm very upset about them getting released in the first place. So like it's a lose-lose. If they reference them getting released, it would have been like, wow, like, it sucks to get released. And then what we got here was like, it was upsetting because they're not there. If they didn't reference it at all, I'd be upset. I'd also be upset because if they just had Indy in a singles match or something with no reference at all, I think that'd be upsetting as well. This is it's just disappointing. There's nothing I can really say about it other than that. Steven predicts kind of based on this. He says, watch, Duke and Indy will get together eventually. Maybe. I mean, Eddie points out they might have to they might be forced to change the storyline here because of the releases. And Eddie agrees about maybe having Indy and Duke getting together. There's something to be said for that. I'm sure they could find a way to get there. It's just, again, it's just so disappointing in the first place. Just that this is how the cookie has crumbled, I guess. It's just really upsetting. And someone had tweeted about doing the show. It's like where we are now. It's like it's hard to, especially I'm saying for me, like it's hard to really get invested in anybody as a character because there's no guarantee they're going to be around in 3 months, 6 months, let alone a year. And I was definitely thinking about that as well. Like, you know, I was such a big fan of Dexter and Index. I got so invested in it, and now that's gone, right? Now it's gone. And now I'm becoming at least a little more cautious. I'm like, I don't want to get so invested in something when there's every reason to believe that that at least, you know, something like this could happen again. They might get released, and then it's just poof, gone in thin air. Yeah, you know, and that's hard. That makes it hard as a viewer, as a fan. And I guess in some ways I try to like kind of separate myself from it as best I can, you know, it being my job to cover it. But there's that fan part of me. I got so invested in Index. And so we have some like tonight where I was just upset about it. But it was a very, probably like 30 seconds tops. And then that was it. And it was like, all right, onward we go. DJ points out that John did tweet in favor of Induke. He said, I think, yeah, he just said Induke is greater than sign Index tonight. We'll talk. John and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit. Hopefully, if he comes back next week, because I know we've always felt differently about Index. It's just disappointing. I don't want to keep dwelling on it, but the releases specifically, Brian says WWE needs to reference the releases. I mean, yeah, like these days, the releases aren't even, the company doesn't report them themselves. They're leaked to media outlets. It's been Fightful a lot lately, and then, you know, everyone else aggregates it. But usually it's like they just get like kind of leaked like that. Whereas back in the day, it was like, oh, WWE wishes X well in the future endeavors. So at least it's official, and at least it's like, okay, like it's, I don't know, it feels more final in that sense, if that makes sense. I don't know. So it is weird in that sense. And now not even referencing them on the show is also weird because like they're literally not there anymore. Like Nash Carter MSK is an exception. That was very complicated. I understand that. Something like this, they get cut because of budget cuts and then they're just gone. It's a weird time. Nash definitely agrees. She says that she's sick of the releases. We've had too many. I mean, yeah, 10 people getting released last Friday. That's just the latest in several rounds that we've seen since 2020 at this point. As well, last year was an absolute bloodshed of some of the releases. Like, hopefully it seems like we're kind of slowing down now in terms of like, you know, this was the first. I mean, they had some cuts of January as well. At some point, I don't know when it's going to stop. Eddie points out there's at least a rumor going around. New NXT talent will be given 90 days or they'll be cut. Kevin points that out as well. Like it'll be like a trial run. And like again, I talked about it last night. Like there are things you could think about as from a business perspective. You're like, okay, that makes sense. From a fan perspective, it's like how, as I said a minute ago, how if let's say name a talent, they debut, and then 90 days comes and they're featured, but then you know something doesn't click, doesn't work, and they're released. How are we as viewers supposed to like actually invest in that person or in anybody when, if that is true, if that, you know, trial run kind of thing is true, when anybody could be gone in what, 90 days, you know? I don't know. I hope that's not true. I don't know if it is. I can't confirm or deny it. I don't know. I am very much on the outside of all this kind of stuff. I can see it being true in terms of what we've seen so far. The rounds and rounds of releases, very much business oriented, all about the bottom line, all about the money. National points out, yeah, budget cuts, question mark, and stop hiring people. I mean, not to point fingers, but you sign any one person to a big deal, whether it's signing a free agent or re-signing someone to a big contract, you know, then you release people kind of like, even if it's not as a direct consequence, there does seem to be some kind of correlation to that. it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, but again, there's some concern about, DJ points out, maybe there are more releases to come at some point. I mean, again, I don't know when they're going to stop, and just kind of got to ride it out and hope. Sounds really cruel, but in some ways you're left kind of just hoping, well, I hope that it doesn't affect the people that I do invest in, that I am a fan of. And that's never fun. It's always crappy no matter what. But yeah, hopefully you'll just kind of, I mean, yeah, usually there have been some rounds where it's like it hasn't affected someone that I really, really like. And I'm like, well, that sucks. But like, I'm not all that upset about it. But if it's, Dexter Loomis, or last year it was Aleister Black, all that kind of stuff. Like I've been talking about that last year. There have been some rounds where it's just really rough because you become such a big fan of one, they get released, and it sucks. But I don't want to keep dwelling on it because like we talk about these cuts all the time because they keep happening. I'm sure we'll talk about them again. We'll hear talk about NXT. It was actually a pretty good show. Let's focus on that. Even though Steven gets us back on track by bringing up one of the, at least for me, one of my least favorite parts of the show here. So, Spring Breakin', as you could expect, a very horny show. Mandy Rose, it goes to a tanning salon. Say no more. And she's planning a beach day with Toxic Attraction. She's going to go tanning. And Wendy Chu sneaks in. We saw her 2 weeks in a row squirt a water gun at Mandy. I talked about that last week. Wasn't the biggest fan of that, but yeah. So Mandy's tanning. Wendy Chu sneaks in and she fiddles with the tanning bed, and Mandy Rose comes out and she's just like strawberry red, tomato red. Haha, it's a prank, but I guess. But Steven points out, sneaky Wendy Chu got Mandy Rose. Rose looks like a strawberry. Nesha says that she loves Wendy Chu. I thought this vignette was pretty rough. I didn't particularly care for it myself. I just like I like comedy. I like to laugh. I like to laugh when I'm watching wrestling. Like if it's done well, I like it. This just seemed like a little overly goofy to me. If any of you have seen the movie Christmas with the Cranks, there's a scene where it's a middle-aged couple and they go to a tan salon. It's pretty similar. No one like tampers with it, but like the guy tans too long. It has I'm blanking on his name, but like they tans too long, and it's very, very similar thing. I just couldn't help but think of that. Eddie, sounds like we're maybe on the same page. Eddie says Wendy Chu's like a kid from kindergarten, at least for me, with all these pranks she's doing. Yeah, I mean, it's a little silly to me. But Brian also that seems to be on board. He says the tanning segment was funny. Wendy Chu is growing on him. As I always say, to each their own. And again, maybe in some ways, I should say the first segment, this wasn't clear. The second segment, when it's clear that this was a continuation of Wendy's alliance with Roxanne Perez or Roxy, that's when I was like, I don't want Roxanne to get involved with this, because we saw that last week as well. I'm like, I don't want Roxanne to be involved with this kind of thing. It's just goofy, and like, it's not exactly like, fitting of a champion or a champion contender. It's like, it's just a little silly to me. I don't know. So Mandy comes out of the tanning salon. She's beet red, tomato red, whatever. And then Gigi Dolan, Jason Jane of Toxic Attraction are there. And they're like, oh, you can't go to the beach like that. We'll go without you, whatever. And Mandy goes and looks at herself in the mirror and she screams. Again, I guess, for the comedy. I might as well loop it in here. So later in the show, part 2 of this vignette, Gigi and JC went to the beach. Again, NXT is very horny. They were splashing in the water. No surprise there. And then Wendy and Roxanne show up and they steal Gigi and JC's shoes and their car keys, and then they run away. And then Toxic Attraction runs after them, and then they move their car and give them their keys, keep the shoes, so they have to run across a hot, pavement of blacktop, essentially. As someone who's done that myself a couple times throughout my life, it's very painful, not a fun time. So that, in some ways, like, I guess of the 2 segments here, I like that one better in some ways, but at the same time, I was also upset in some ways about how Roxanne was involved, because like Roxanne had such a great debut last week facing Mandy Rose, and now she's involved in this kind of goofy storyline here. I don't know. And then there's one point in the segment where she was like, oh, I should probably be training for the breakout tournament that starts next week. And Wendy was like, this is training. I'm like, No, it's not. Like, this is not training for a tournament. Like, none of this is wrestling, obviously. But Eddie says Roxanne, nonetheless, probably the favorite to win the breakout tournament. I hope so. I hope so. They announced tonight Fallon, Henley, and Tayden Paxley as two more entrants into the breakout tournament. I think they announced Roxanne. I don't know if that's actually been confirmed yet. They showed her vignette, I think, like 2 weeks ago, and they showed a bunch of vignettes last week. I don't know if they ever officially confirmed her for the tournament. I assumed last week, and I assume now that she's in it. And then she said tonight that she should be training. So it seems very clear that she will be in the tournament. Of the people that have been announced, I would probably say she's the favorite, and I hope she wins. I'm biased. Again, I'm a big fan of hers, but if not her, I don't really know. She seems to be the most established already. And we saw that with, I think Carmelo Hayes won last year. He was already somewhat established, at least on NXT back then. So it doesn't need to be a newcomer. It could be someone that's already kind of debuted and gotten the feet under them a little bit. And then they break out by winning the tournament and go from there. So I'm hopeful. DJ reminds us that Roxy or Roxanne announced it last week. I missed that. I remember she was cutting a promo, but yeah, now tonight definitely confirmed. Like, she was like, oh, I should be training. So she's in the tournament. Looking forward to it. I'll say it right now. She's my favorite to win. I hope so. I'll be rooting for her. So that'll start next week, the breakout tournament here. Whoever wins that will get a title shot. Presumably, they would challenge for the singles title. And Eddie says, who will be the one to dethrone Mandy Rose? He says he's thinking Cora Jade, Roxanne, or Nikita Lyons, probably in the summer. I think that's realistic. I think that would be a pretty good time to end Mandy Rose's reign there. If not the next Halloween Havoc, that would be just about a year, so that'd be pretty cool. I would agree with the three options based on what we've seen so far in terms of how they're being built up. Again, I'm very biased. I'll go for Roxanne Perez on that one. I hope that she wins, although that would be very, very soon to do in the summer. Maybe like by NXT War Games if they won't draw it out that long. But if they want to do it sooner, I think Cora Jade could definitely do it in the summer. And I think Nikita Lyons as well. We'll talk about the two of them in a minute here. They had a tag team match tonight. But again, biased, I'll say that I'm rooting for Roxanne. But based on what we've seen so far, I would say Cora or Nikita, especially Cora. She's been built up very, very well here in the women's division. So I'm definitely thinking that, one of them, maybe like Great American Bash or whatever they do for the summer. This will be the first like summer without a takeover. They had takeover 36 last summer, so I'm not sure what they will do other than Great American Bash for this summer. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I would imagine, summer-ish, maybe like if not, fall at the latest. I would imagine Mandy Rose will probably lose that title, and I think Eddie, those are all three good picks there. So we'll have to wait and see. But we'll stick in the women's division here. Speaking of Cora Jade and Nikita Lyons here, they had a tag team match against Natalya and Last Legend. Match was fine. Last Legend, I know she's gotten a lot of criticism for her ring skills. I thought this match was a little rough at some points. Like, it wasn't what I would call a banger or like a really, really great match by any means. I thought both teams worked together fairly well. And let me look at my notes here. I believe it was Cora Jade got the pin. She had a diving senton. So this would seem to suggest to me that, she would seemingly, be pretty set to have a singles match with Natalya at some point soon. She had, that angle where Natalya came down NXT and slapped her, and she had that promo about looking up Natalya. So it feels like that's definitely the payoff here. When that happens, I don't know. I don't know if they would do that on a normal episode of NXT, but I don't know if they can draw that out for another 2 months, essentially, whatever it might be, till if they do a Great American Bash kind of thing. It's only May now, the very beginning of May now, so that's a long ways away. But that's where we're going here. Nikita Lyons definitely becoming a big player on NXT. The crowd loves her as well. They're chanting very, very loudly for her. So she's definitely getting over in a lot of ways as well, and she's been booked successfully. So I think that her rise to the top here is definitely working in that regard. But for Lash Legend here, DJ says Lash better in the ring than on the mic, but Brian says Lash is improving with it. I guess he says she's improving generally. The match was good. He says he's happy at Cora and Nikita won. And then DJ wonders if we'll get a Lash Legend and Natalya feud soon after tonight. Ironically, it was Natalya's fault. She kicked Lash Legend in the face, and I wonder, would they turn Lash face? I don't know. Like, Natalya is very clearly the heel at this point of this feud here. Maybe after Cora Jade, or maybe they might draw it out by having a little feud between the two there to answer my own questions about how they might draw this thing out with Natalya and Cora Jade. I think that's possible, at least to do like a very brief feud in that sense. Steven says maybe back to the women's title division, women's title scene here. He says Cora could be Mandy's next opponent, but Lyons definitely has a bright future. I'll definitely agree with that. I mean, it seems like they've already kind of had kind of a feud with Mandy and Cora, but like it seems like we never really got like a full-fledged singles feud. Like it was going to be a singles match for Stand Deliver, then it turned into I think it was a fatal four-way. So I feel like they could definitely run that back. But DJ points out for Lash and Natalya, they could easily do a heel versus heel. Sure, why not? Like it's fine. They do that kind of stuff. If not all the time, like I would say fairly often. Eddie says Nikita will be the biggest. Nikita is the biggest star in wrestling once in NXT. He says WWE had high hopes on her due to her popularity. I mean, she's definitely becoming more popular, kind of as you know, as we've seen here. Like she's already she debuted, and I didn't necessarily pick up on her popularity like right away, but kind of like Solo Sikoa, like the crowd's definitely responding and kind of rallying around her. So I think that's working for her, and you know, then WWE's pushing her. I don't know, it's like a chicken or the egg thing, but clearly they're invested in her and trying to push her as one of the kind of bright stars here in the women's division. So again, as Eddie's comment earlier about maybe having her potentially be, if not the next champion, at least a contender, I think that's definitely a pretty safe bet. So she's been an impressive newcomer so far. Someone else, a very impressive newcomer, was Nathan Frazier, former NXT UK star, made his official in-ring debut on NXT 2.0 tonight. DJ points out here that Nathan was very impressive. He upset Grayson Waller thanks to Undertaker's teachable moment using the air horn to distract Waller. I definitely thought that was a pretty fun way to do a distraction finish. Usually you'll have someone like get up on the apron and like yell at somebody or do something, you know, kind of standard. The air horn was at least kind of clever and different, so I liked that. That was a pretty fun way to kind of, you know, make it a little different. Nathan Frazier was, you know, seemed pretty impressive. Like he was diving all over the place, high flying. Steven points out that he's like Ricochet, definitely good comparison there. Ricochet, IC champion, not a bad similarity to be made there. So I thought the match was good. I was a little surprised in some ways that Waller lost, given how he's been built up, but maybe this means they're definitely determined to push Frazier. I mean, giving him a win like that right off the bat here. So I feel like Waller might want a rematch, or this might lead to a feud with Waller and Andre Chase. I think that'd be entertaining as well. But people seem definitely impressed with Nathan Frazier here. Brian says he was very impressive. He showed out tonight. His finisher was like this corkscrew dive. It didn't look real. Like he was like just like he did like I can't even describe it. If you haven't seen it, NXT put up a gif of it. It's like this corkscrew. It looks like it defies celebrity. Sorry, I read Dita's comment. It looks like he defied reality, and he was just like. It was really impressive. Definitely, the Ricochet comparison definitely is a fair one. Eddie points out that Nathan Frazier is Seth Rollins' protege, or at least his trainee. He trained at the Black and Brave Academy out in Iowa. And Eddie says that he has the in-ring talent to become a huge star. I mean, yeah, again, at least like the Ricochet thing, the in-ring talent's there. I thought he had a backstage interview that was fine. He was talking about how he's been waiting for this moment his whole life. Fairly generic, but didn't embarrass himself with a bad promo. Like it was fine. DJ asked who is the celebrity that you know, kind of. I think he like gave Waller a high five. I didn't catch the name. It was somebody from I think some MTV show. It was Mark Long of MTV's The Challenge. If that sounds any familiar. I don't watch that show, so I can't really say any more than that. But apparently he's pretty popular. You know, and that side of things, I don't know, but little pop culture shine for Grayson Waller there, I guess, for whatever that's worth. DJ says that Frazier reminds him of Heath Slater mixed with Paul London. I would say that's pretty fair. High flying, got the long like orangish hair. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Steven, yeah, I don't know. Never heard of him. I don't know. I don't watch The Challenge. I know it's very popular, but apparently it was Mark Long of MTV's The Challenge. I'm looking at some coverage of it right now. I don't know who that is. I really don't. Apparently, he was on Raw last year, very briefly. At least the same thing. He was in the crowd. Cool if you're into that. Eddie says maybe way down the road here, how good would Seth Rollins versus Nathan Frazier be? I think that'd be good. We're talking about how good Nathan Frazier is in the ring. Seth Rollins is great. Sounds like a good match to me. Nathan Frazier has a very good theme song. I'm someone that really likes like punk / like, not alt rock, but like, punk / Blink-182, that kind of thing. And that's what his theme song reminded me of. Like kind of something you would expect to hear on NXT Black and Gold. Maybe that's kind of why it resonated with me. I thought that was cool. And I think it's a good fit for him, at least from what we've seen so far. If it kind of like high energy, kind of gets a feeling like, a little pumped up. I like it. And I tweeted that and people seem to agree. So people seem to like Nathan Frazier and the theme song. So Nathan Frazier off to a good start here. And again, I thought the Andre Chase, the air horn thing was pretty fun. So that was just, again, one of several things here. Next notable match we had was the Creed brothers facing the Viking Raiders. Viking Raiders back on NXT. They had a brief backstage interaction with Pretty Deadly, the tag team champions, and they at least hinted that they might be at least considering sticking around. Pretty Deadly was kind of getting in their face and maybe rubbing them the wrong way. And they said, "Oh, we're here to face the Creed brothers, but we could definitely shift our attention to you and the titles." So pretty interesting there. Pretty good match. Friendly reminder: the Viking Raiders are great when they get the chance to show it. Like they're practically never on TV these days on Raw and SmackDown. When they are, I remember the last time I remember seeing them, really, they were getting squashed by, I think it was almost weeks ago, and maybe they were like the Andre the Giant Battle Royal or something. But it feels like they really haven't been on TV all that much lately, which is a shame. They're very, very talented, and I'm glad they got at least the spotlight on NXT. If it leads to something else, great, and I hope it does. I mean, they have to really wrestle tonight. Usually it's like, even when they were being featured as a tag team, I feel like they're doing kind of a lot of the same stuff, being very much main roster tag team wrestling here. But they got to really like remind everybody how good they are. And I think that's a very good thing. Steven says, seems to agree. He says Viking Raiders being in NXT could be the best thing to happen to them. I would agree. I mean, they're really good. They got to really just showcase themselves tonight. Roderick Strong helped the Creed brothers win the match, and they argued afterwards because they didn't approve of his interference. So definitely some dissension there. Earlier in the show, we had a backstage thing with the Diamond Mine, minus Malcolm Bivens, like Persia and Dexter Lumis. Malcolm Bivens, very unfortunately released on Friday. Very, 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 very unfortunate. He's so talented. Like everybody, as far as I could tell, like everybody loves Malcolm Bivens. Like he's so entertaining. He's just a funny guy. And always just made the most of his minutes whenever he's on the show. So another disappointing one there. Brian says he misses Bivens. It was weird seeing Dynamite without him. I mean, yeah, he was really like the voice of Dynamite in a lot of ways. But and then having this promo with Roderick Strong saying he's the leader of Diamond Mine, no reference to Bivens at all. Weird, and just a bummer, again, to say the least. And Eddie agreeing that's weird seeing Diamond Mine without him. And we're moving on here again. Diamond had Tyler Rust. He's gone. They had Hachiman, Hideki Suzuki. He got released as well. So now now Bivens as well. So now we're down to Roderick Strong, Creed Brothers, and Ivy Nile at this point. But the Creed Brothers did defeat the Viking Raiders, so big win for them. Thought the match was good. I enjoyed it. Viking Raiders are great. Creed Brothers impressed me as well. The one Logan Creed popped, like he's really been impressing me. He like popped up to the top rope. He did the superplex. I mean, it seemed really, really. He was really, really cool. Like he's just like. He feels like he has a lot of potential. Maybe not to make that comparison, but he feels like the potential breakout star of the group, possibly. Not to knock Brutus, but like I don't know. It sounds maybe like very, very lofty, but like seeing Logan Creed do that, like pop up superplex, and he's got like good look. He did like the straps down kind of thing. Kind of reminded me of like Kurt Angle in some ways. Like he's very lean. He's got the wrestling singlet. He's doing these suplexes, and he's got that wrestling background, legitimate athlete background. I was pretty impressed. I was like, and I hadn't been that high on the Creed Brothers so far, but I was definitely impressed tonight. So good one for him. Julius did the suplex. Yeah, I get him mixed up. Julius did the suplex. I'm thinking of Julius. Brutus is the more stocky, kind of thicker one, but Julius is definitely the leaner one, and he definitely impressed me, especially more here in this match. I think they both had a great match, a great performance here, but I'm thinking Julius might be the breakout of the two, potentially. Not to say that Brutus won't be successful. I'm just saying I'm really seeing something with Julius here. But We'll see what happens with them. And Diamond Mine, that's one group that we can look forward to seeing here on 2.0. Two more groups that can remain featured are Santos Escobar and his Legado del Fantasma, and Tony D'Angelo and his group of goons. So we had the sit down between Tony and Santos tonight. And again, I've said it many times here, I'm usually much more a fan of NXT when it focuses on the wrestling. But this sit down with Tony and Santos was one of my favorite parts of the show. This felt like it was right out of The Godfather or The Sopranos. I thought it was very, very entertaining. So they're saying, you've been disrespecting me, and they're talking about. Santos says he doesn't respect Tony as a businessman, and Tony says that he's not playing games. He says there's enough business for the two of us, but then Santos says we can work together. Tony says that he doesn't, take a backseat to anybody. But then they finally agree that a peace agreement would be in everyone's best interest. So that they decide to work together. They drink on it, and it seems like they're going to work together in some capacity. Later in the show, Santos kidnaps AJ Galante, Tony's right-hand man, essentially, from what we can kind of tell so far. So it feels like he kind of, if not stabbed him in the back, at least is manipulating the circumstances, and is kind of being a little tricky, I guess, for lack of a better word. So it feels like there's a very surface level cooperation right now, and we're going to see this explode very soon. Maybe even as soon as next week, if/when Tony realizes that AJ is missing. They literally kidnapped him, put him in a van, and drove away. NXT has a very oddly high amount of kidnapping spots on the show. I don't know why, but again, I think for now, it feels like they're going to work together. And DJ's asking about that. Are they going to work together? Are they going to feud? What are they going to do? I feel like they're going to have some kind of coexistence kind of thing, and it's going to quickly fall apart. Then they're going to feud. Brian says when they do feud, he said that match will be a very good one. It's going to be a must-see match. I agree. In the ring, I think Santos is great. And again, I've said it before, Tony definitely feels like more of a character wrestler, but I've been fairly impressed with them in the ring as well. So I think the combination of those two makes it very interesting. Eddie points out, it's like the Mafia versus the Latino gang, whatever you want to call them. It's interesting. I think it's pretty fascinating. It's a little different. And again, more often than not, that's all I want. Just something a little different. So I enjoyed it. I'm curious to see where it goes. Steven says they're going to drag his feud for a while. I hope if they drag it, I hope they make it interesting. We were talking about that last night. If they can find ways to shake it up and make it more, just keep it progressing, twists and turns like that, like Index, I think that'd be good. If it's more the same stuff kind of every week, that's when you kind of run into problems. But so far, I'm liking it. So far, I've been entertained. I thought tonight was a pretty good segment. So no complaints here. But I definitely agree with Steven as well, saying Santos deserves a title. Yeah, he's long overdue. He had the cruiserweight title, but I kind of wanted to see. I want to see him beat Bron Breakker for the title, with the NXT title, when he faced him at Vengeance Day. Didn't happen, but I was rooting for him because I think he's just that talented, and I'm hoping for him. Maybe he'll be the one that dethrones Cameron Grimes at some point soon. Who knows? But I definitely agree he deserves the title at some point soon. Here's hoping it happens. But we're talking about newcomers potentially. DJ points out Alba Fire, formerly known as Kaylee Ray, had a brief promo tonight. She was saying that the smallest spark can light a big fire, and she's going to ignite her rebirth next week. All right. At least, again, they're trying to make the name change make sense. Borderline kind of goofy with the fire puns. I'm a fan of puns, again, when they're done well. This was a little hammy for me, but I'm curious to see what happens with the name. Curious to see what happens with Kaylee Ray as Alba Fire. She was called up to NXT and kind of featured for a while, but it feels like they've been very stop and start with her. Again, friendly reminder, she and Io Shirai won the Women's Dusty Cup, a tag team tournament, and used it to challenge for a singles title. So not exactly a smooth sailing ride for Kaylee Ray or Alba Fire on NXT 2.0 at this point. I'm hopeful that this name change is some kind of, she's saying it's her rebirth. I'm hoping it's beneficial for her. Yeah. The name changes again. We talked about that. Weird, understandable for business reasons, but still weird. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I don't know what she'll be doing next week. She just said that her rebirth will be ignited next week, whatever that means. So hopefully it works out for her. Otherwise, here we talk. I should mention we have the women's bracket tournament a little bit. They mentioned Fallon, Henley, and Tayden Paxley, and just a brief chance to say, like, especially with some of these the women's bracket tournament things, some of the promos and vignettes for these things have been very, very campy and like very, very old school. Fallon Henley's promo was saying that she loves horseback riding and she has a horse, and she's like, next time I see my horse, I'm gonna show her the contract that I win in the breakout tournament. And I'm like, it seems it's just a little goofy. It's like some of these characters just feel like caricatures in some ways. They're just like so one dimensional. It's like, oh, Fallon Henley loves horses. And then we had Tayden Pax, who was talking about powerlifting and visualizing success, and she talked about that in her promo. And then last week, especially, some of the newcomers, that we haven't seen yet. The one, I don't remember her name off the top of my head. The one was like a business executive. The one was, I don't remember. They seem so like just very limited in some ways, very just like cartoonish. And we've been saying that for months about how these characters are like cartoony. They're just like so kind of like, I don't know, they're just that like strictly defined in some ways, where it's like they're like, Fallon Henley, she says she's a small town girl. It's just like, it just seems a little silly, but it sounds harsh. Like, I don't care if you ride horses. Like, I want to see if you can wrestle. And like, give me an interview where you talk about like why you care about, being in the tournament or whatever. And Brian says that they all sound the same in the promos. They all sound the same underneath these very like one-dimensional, cartoonish, like strictly defined characters. The small town girl who rides horses, the powerlifter who visualizes success, the business executive. Roxanne's promo at first was about how she used to play the video games, and now she's come to the real WWE ring, not in a video game. Thankfully, she seems to be an exception. She's actually, we're seeing a little more development with her. But so far, like some of these characters, like, and I think this is true of NXT 2.0 in general. It's just so like I keep thinking of just one dimensional. And I know you've got to start somewhere. You got to start with like some character, and then you can add layers to it. But ideally, to me, you would start with a fairly complex character in some ways, at least a character that has layers, and then you dig deeper. These characters, where it feels like we're starting one dimensional and then they're like adding more layers later, if that makes sense. So that kind of took me out of it, but I'm hopeful for the tournament. Again, hopeful Roxanne will win. I'm sure it'll be good. A good chance to see who these women are beyond these kind of goofy characters. But Eddie says he likes the tournament here. Have the talent progress, feature some matchups, and makes it more important. I agree. Tournaments are great. We talked about it last week. It's not just about who wins the tournament. It's also about who impresses, who has good matches, who kind of stands out. You don't have to win to break out. You can have an impressive run in the tournament. So regardless of who wins, I'm looking forward to seeing who has just a breakout performance in general. To me, that's kind of the more important thing in a lot of ways. So because it's not about just one person. So I definitely think that's why it's definitely beneficial to have tournaments like this. So it's a helpful way to kind of replenish and rebuild the women's division, and I should say build up the next generation of it. So it's a win-win. Eddie points out here, speaking of tournaments, do we think they'll bring back the Mae Young Classic potentially, but with independent wrestlers involved? Probably not. I feel like if they're going to, it's hard. I feel like if they were going to do that, maybe it would have been last year, maybe. I know we were still definitely in kind of the heart of the pandemic in some ways, at least kind of coming out of it. They had crowds return, so they were clearly kind of approaching it as like the show goes on. But we had numbers surge a little bit. NXT never went back on the road until Stand and Deliver, so it feels like they're doing things very separately down here in NXT. But in some ways, I think last year would have been the best time or the most realistic time for them to do the Mae Young Classic, because especially before Triple H took it went on his absence. Feels like that was very much a Triple H thing, utilizing the independent wrestlers, tapping into that side of the wrestling world. And now NXT 2.0 very much it feels like it has been geared toward more bringing in athletes from other fields football, soccer, basketball, whatever, the NIL program that's starting to kind of take shape, and we're seeing some of that come to fruition here, and we will continue to. I don't know if I see the Mae Young Classic with independent wrestlers. Maybe they'll bring it back with people already on the roster, and then some of these newcomers that I just mentioned, potentially. I don't know. I want them to. I think we were just talking about tournaments are great. Getting a chance to see some new people, but I think that's definitely an obstacle in that regard. Steven wonders any word on when NXT will move back to Full Sail. I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about NXT traveling at all, as far as I know. But all indications seem to suggest they'll be in Full Sail in the Capitol Wrestling Center for now, for the foreseeable future. And I don't know. I remember, like, when they moved out of Full Sail, it seemed like they were moving out of Full Sail, and like it seemed like they'd be open to moving back at some point, but it didn't seem like we're moving for now, but then we're ready to come back. I more got the impression that they were just moving, and then obviously the pandemic and everything complicates things, and now we're still kind of coming out of it and figuring things out. So I don't really know where they stand on that, and I'm curious to see what the future holds for that. I can't speak with any accuracy to what that might be. I honestly don't know. As soon as we know more, as soon as more info's out there, I'll either write it myself, or I'll be on WrestleZone, because obviously that's a big news story. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, and we will as well, and hopefully we'll have more info about that as soon as possible, because again, that is definitely relevant to the world of NXT here, and I imagine it's something we might be hearing about at some point soon. I don't know if they would want to stay in the Capitol Wrestling Center, the WWE Performance Center, forever, but I just don't know. But lastly here, I think that just about takes us to the main event here. Just looking through here, I talked about, yes, it does. So in the main event, we had Bron Breakker defending the NXT title against Joe Gacy. These guys have been feuding for quite a while now. Joe Gacy abducted Bron Breakker's father, Rick Steiner. They've been feuding. They've been a little goofy at some points. They had like Joe Gacy's Druids. I think it was last week or the week before. A little campy, but and they had the one thing where like Gacy's face is all over the video screens. A little silly for my liking, but at the very least, a featured storyline for this show. This was the main event match. Gacy looked fairly good. He got to actually compete and hold his own against Breakker. He dominated him at some points. Pretty competitive match. In the end, Breakker just won with a spear. And then it was worth pointing out, during the match, they panned to like this hooded guy in the crowd. And then after the match, as Bron Breakker was celebrating, we had these like hooded guys wearing red masks come to the ring, and they stood on the apron, and the show ended. The show just ended. So we have no idea who they are, if they're aligned with Joe Gacy or someone else. The red masks, well, that's something new as far as like the Druids that Gacy had didn't have that at first. So unless this is like an evolution for them, I don't know. But Breakker wins, and DJ wonders. He's asking if we think that that Breakker winning was the right call here. I think so. Gacy did not feel like a valid contender to really win the title tonight. But DJ points out, it's also worth pointing out that Gacy says NXT won't be the same if he doesn't win tonight, and he says you should all be afraid if I don't win tonight. Really suggesting he'll do something as a consequence of losing. I don't know what that would be beyond somehow getting a rematch with Bron Breakker. He already kidnapped the guy's father, so I don't know what else that might look like. But yeah, I feel like he was never really realistically going to beat Bron tonight. So again, it was good to have the featured storyline, but didn't really feel like, and it felt like it was pretty much and it was inevitable. It was inevitable that Breakker would win. Feels like we're gonna have a rematch, because again, this ending leads me to believe that. It could be wrong. It could be someone else. I don't know. But potentially we have these Druids here. DJ wonders, could we have Gacy bring? Okay, DJ doesn't bring back Bray Wyatt as his backup after seeing Gacy like hang upside down from the turnbuckle. DJ, I always love your creativity. If they bring back Bray Wyatt, it's not going to be to work with Joe Gacy in NXT. Like, I don't think they're going to bring back Bray Wyatt anytime soon. Wyatt is doing his, or Wyndham Rotunda these days is doing his own thing. If they bring him back, I would definitely imagine it would be the main roster. I don't think it would be to be working with Joe Gacy. DJ, no, we never know, right? Anything can happen. We absolutely never know. Anything's possible. I don't see it myself. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But as Brian says, Gacy's like Bray Wyatt Jr. The match is funny, and he was happy that Breakker retained. So definitely a lot of similarities. If they work together, it would make sense because of that overlap. Definitely, I've been comparing Gacy to Wyatt. I think since he debuted, really, he's always reminded me of him. So there definitely is that connection there. But otherwise, here for Bron Breakker, Eddie says that Bron is the future. He has the tools to be the next big thing that Vince McMahon wants. Feels like it. He's got the look. He's got just like the believability. He's a powerhouse. What more could you want? He looks and seems like a star, and he's been shining so far on NXT 2.0. So another good defense for him. I feel like this feud will continue, and beyond that, we'll see who could potentially dethrone him. At this point, I would say maybe down the road, Kamala Hayes would be one of my front runners at this point, but that would probably be like kind of like Mandy Rose, maybe the Great American Bash in the summer or so, because again, we've already seen Bron Breakker on Raw, so it feels like they might be potentially ready to call him up at some point sooner rather than later in a vague sense, whether that's in the fall or maybe this is ways away, but maybe in the next Rumble. I don't know, but I feel like he's definitely locked in as a champion right now. So another good win for him here. Steven says for the next champion, maybe the guy to dethrone him, or at least to face him next, maybe Cameron Grimes. I can see that as well. Grimes having a good run of the title so far, and I think him winning the North American title definitely helps kind of elevate him. So I like that idea. Also like the idea of having Santos Escobar, big fan of his. Eddie, I think you're the guy that said Von Wagner earlier as well, and he's saying for the NXT title as well here, Von Wagner. Not trying to knock the guy, but boy, I hope not. But no Von Wagner tonight. People don't seem to like that idea. Not loving the idea of having Von Wagner, but being the North American champion, being NXT champion, let alone North American champion. But yeah, I like those ideas of Grimes, of Escobar. I would think Carmelo Hayes as well there, but we'll see. DJ wonders if Breakker could be the next Brock Lesnar. I think Brock Lesnar is one of a kind. I don't think we're ever going to have another absolute Brock Lesnar. Could he be the next big thing? Potentially. Could he be very successful? Potentially. But Brock Lesnar, that is a very lofty bar. I think he has the tools to succeed, and I think he has a very bright future. I'll leave it at that. Eddie says the WWE should be doing maybe they should be doing a men's breakout tournament, and then the winner could dethrone Bron Breakker. I think at this point, especially, whoever will dethrone Bron is already on the roster, and I think that's why, in my mind, Hayes, Grimes, or maybe Escobar. I would say, especially at this point. Again, I'm thinking probably Carmelo Hayes really at this point, but we'll wait and see. A number of options. Definitely is an interesting time here on NXT 2.0. So this was a spring break-in. Fairly good show. I was pretty pleasantly surprised. As I said at the start, it pretty much lived up to my expectations. I thought the card was pretty good, even though this match, the main event, didn't think Breakker had any chance of losing here. I thought it was a fine match. Overall, pretty solid show. I think it flew by for the most part. There are parts I didn't really enjoy, the 1-2 things, some other things here and there. But overall, not a bad show. As we've been saying for the past couple weeks, NXT 2.0 definitely making some strides. So I can't knock him for that. I think it's better than it used to be. And at this point, in some ways, as weird as it seems to say, I think it's at least some weeks, it's at least bordering on being better than SmackDown in some ways. And that seems crazy because a year ago we were saying SmackDown was the best show. SmackDown's in a bit of a rough patch, and now NXT 2.0 is making progress. Raw has been fairly better lately, so a fairly solid outing. So we got 2 7s in a row here from Steven and Brian. Brian says, the matches were fun. North American title match tore the house down. I definitely agree. I thought that match was very, very good. A great start to the show. For me, I would probably go for a 6.8. I feel like I've been giving like every show a 6.0, 6.8 lately. And I don't really mean to. I just like a 7's pretty high. I don't want to be too low either. So I think a 6.0, 6.8 is fair. If not for the Wendy 2 stuff, I'd probably go for a pretty solid 7. Maybe I'll go for a 6.9. I thought the show was fine. I thought it was pretty solid. Like I overall enjoyed it for the most part. But again, making progress here. NXT 2.0 is making improvements, and I'm enjoying it more than I used to. So a pretty good thing. But DJ points out 8.8. My gosh, DJ, 8.8 for NXT 2.0 here. A very high score there. But as I always say, I want you all to enjoy the show. Even if I don't like love it, and again tonight I enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it. So to hear that some of you are really enjoyed it, like DJ with 8.8 there. Great, makes me happy. Something else that makes me happy, as Steven points out, we're going to see Dante Martin versus Rey Fenix tomorrow night, Wednesday night on Dynamite. I am looking forward to that as well. That's going to be a very, very good match. Looks like it will be in for a good show. For all things AEW, tune into the two Dynamite dudes with attitude, Marcus and Dominic. There are AEW podcasts. They cover all things AEW. I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about what promises to be a very good match there with Dante and Rey Fenix there. Otherwise here, I'm planning on being here on Friday with Robert E. Fleece, hopefully for the SmackDown post show. Then there'll be WrestleMania Backlash on Sunday. We'll have a post show there as well on Sunday night. Again, I'm not quite sure if John will be up to it for joining us there, but I plan on doing a post show for that because it's on paper. It's a pain in my event. On paper, it's a big show, right? So I plan on doing a show for that. And otherwise, business as usual here. We do the Raw Post show. Myself and usually John Clark do the Raw Post show on Mondays. NXT here on Tuesdays. Two Dynamite Dudes of Attitude cover all things AEW. Robert and I do SmackDown on Fridays. Otherwise, a great stream of interviews constantly come at you guys. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We appreciate it so much. It really means a lot to us. Again, we increasingly see the world outside. It's a scary, upsetting, not in a great place right now. Well, we come here together to do one thing above all others, and that, my friends, is to enjoy wrestling. Thanks for listening, everybody.